welcome to another episode of Dress and Drinks. I'm Leon Weavers. I'm a professor of costume design at Loyola Marymount University. And I just want to thank you all for being here today and tonight for Costume Society of America's Conversations on Dress, today's episode on Dress and Drinks. Should you have any general questions regarding CSA content, please contact Conversations on Dress at costumesocietyamerica.com. Today, I'm super excited, as I always am, but I'm really thrilled to welcome to Dress and Drinks today Paula Alaskovitz from the Avenir Museum of Design and Merchandise at Colorado State University. She has a lifelong passion for fashion history and an international academic background, and brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to her position at Avenir. So we're going to delve into the unique textile and garment collection there, and she will share her insights into the collection's role in teaching and exhibitions, and highlighting the impact of observing textile fragility in today's fast fashion climate. So with that, please welcome Paula Alaskovitz. Please join us, and our cocktail for the evening, it is the Avenir Elegance. So perfect title and perfect name. And for the non-alcoholic version, the Future Refresh. Paula, welcome so much. It's great to see you. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. We're very excited to see what you have to share and to learn more about the collection at Avenir. So, do you want to provide any more background on your professional experience, or do you want to dive right in?
Well, I'll share that I have been here at the Avenir Museum and the Department of Design and Merchandising at Colorado State University for 2 full years. I'm going into my third academic year. Still feels like it was yesterday that I arrived. I will endeavor to share as much as I know, but I admit that there is still a lot for me to learn about our collection. So maybe we'll be able to come back in a few years
Oh,
as well
fantastic.
and share a little more.
Yes, awesome. Excellent. Welcome. Awesome. So let's just dive in. I can't wait to see what you have and learn about your collection, because I've known about it and
Wonderful.
we've actually emailed and exchanged some emails about a few other topics, but this is going to be all new to me and I'm super excited.
Wonderful. I would like to begin by sharing Colorado State University's land acknowledgement. Colorado State University acknowledges with respect that the land that the university is situated on and that I am situated on today is the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute nations and peoples. This was also a site of gathering, trade, and healing for numerous other indigenous nations and tribes. We recognize the indigenous peoples as the stewards of this land and all the relatives within it. As these words of acknowledgement are spoken and heard, the ties that nations have to their traditional homelands are renewed and reaffirmed. CSU is founded as a land grant institution, and we accept that our mission must encompass access to education and inclusion, and significantly, that our founding came at a dire cost to Native nations and peoples whose land this university was built upon. This acknowledgement is the education and inclusion that we must practice in recognizing our institutional history, responsibility, and commitment. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
I would like to start this conversation by sharing a little bit about the museum, about the collection, and how it came to be, because it's gone through many different organizations, many different homes on campus, and it has developed with the care and contribution of many faculty and staff members over the years. And I would particularly like to call attention to Dagmar Gustafson, who is pictured on the slide here. Dagmar Gustafson joined the university in 1948 as an associate professor in textiles and clothing in what was then the Division of Home Economics at
Mhm.
Colorado A&M, before the name change to Colorado State University in 1957. Gustafson went on to become the department head and had many significant accomplishments during her time at the university, one of which was establishing the historic clothing and textile collection that forms the foundation of the Avenir Museum collection. The first donations officially came in 1965, and these donations of garments and textile objects were really to build a study collection. So that mission of a study collection remains really important to who we are and what we do today. So it was intended to support student learning, and Gustafson envisioned a future for this collection that had dedicated research and study space for students, for researchers, that had exhibition space. And we eventually got there. I'm foreshadowing a little bit, but the collection took many different forms and had different homes between then and now. It was housed in different, makeshift classrooms and storage closets around campus. And I want to tell you that our HVAC and climate control system has improved significantly since 1991. We no longer rely on a box fan on the floor in the corner. But I share this image because I think that the idea of making the most of the resources that you have and problem solving in a creative manner is something that a lot of museum professionals can identify with, and particularly museum professionals who work with textiles and dress.
Oh, absolutely. This is a common thread in our stories here at Dress and Drinks. So it's great. But I really appreciate the image of the box fan in the corner. That
Yeah.
is pretty spectacular and wonderful and humble in a way of like just like this is what we're doing and we're doing the best we can.
It is, right? And I actually recognize one of the garments in that image on the right. We have that pulled and dressed, ready to go in an exhibition that we're installing next week. So I'm pleased to say it has survived in the climate conditions with the box fan. But our resources, or I guess resourcefulness and creativity, is still really important to what we do at the museum, even though our home has changed significantly. So we are now very fortunate to be located in this beautiful purpose design building. It opened to the public in 2016, and it houses
Wow.
three dedicated exhibition spaces,
Oh, wow.
classroom, classroom that has a capacity of 99, a beautiful reading room and reference library, as well as workspace for our team. We're currently a team of 5 full-time positions,
Wow.
and we also have a lot of amazing volunteers who help us do what we do. And we also in this building have our proper climate control storage for our collection of over 20,000 pieces. So this is a
Wow,
view
that's
into the back.
amazing. That's amazing. Please tell me you still have the box fan somewhere.
I will have to ask what the future of the box fan became.
Just as an homage in the corner to Dagmar.
Exactly.
And I have to say, as a Midwesterner, I'm so like I have not heard the name Dagmar in decades. So I'm all in already. So this is great.
There we go. And we still do maintain a gallery in her name, the Gustafson Gallery, in one of the other buildings on campus that used to house the collection. So her name and legacy still is very much a part of the museum footprint. So this is a view into our collection space here at the museum. Our collection is primarily donation based, but we
Mhm.
do have a budget for acquisitions. When making those acquisitions, again, we really think about our mission as a teaching collection and how we'll serve growing student interests. So Our students are right now very interested in the historical period of Y2K.
Yes, indeed.
So that is an area that we may be looking to acquire some pieces that fit that interest for them.
Nice.
Our collection now is about 60% Euro American fashionable dress from the late 18th to early 19th century, or our
Mm.
oldest pieces date from then and then continue to the present. The remaining 40% is global textiles and dress that includes flat textiles, yardage, dress, accessories, and we have many highlights. Some of them would be that we have a collection of about 300 kimono, and we
Oh,
have
wow.
an amazing collection of Central Asian ikat, both yardage as well as robes. Those are primarily from Uzbekistan. We have 1,500 pieces of lace and lace making tools. We also have the largest publicly held collection of Richard Blackwell pieces.
Oh, wow.
And we have a significant collection of other designers, including James Galanos, Arnold Scazi, other celebrated designers. But in addition to those designers who are, celebrated and famous, I also want to draw attention to some of the humble objects that we have that I think are quite special in a different way. And one of my favorites is this skirt.
Ooh.
It is a wool circle skirt from the 1950s, but instead of having the classic poodle applique, it has these embroidered moths on it. And I love this piece because I think it's so subversive to have a wool garment with moths on it in a textile collection. Because if we actually had moths in here, that would be, a nightmare. So I find this to be a really charming garment in our collection.
That's someone with a sense of humor, is what that is. That's pretty great. The
Yeah.
embroidery is really lovely too. What a beautiful rendition of a moth. That's amazing.
Isn't it? And then the alternating color scheme with the
Mm.
repeat.
Hmm.
Yes, it's really
Yeah.
beautiful. And I have learned since I've moved to Colorado that moths are a seasonal occurrence here. We are on the path, the flight path of a certain kind of moth as it moves from the high plains to the mountains. So this is a very appropriate piece to have
There you
here
go.
in
There
our
you
collection.
go. That's amazing. That's awesome. That's a lovely skirt.
It is. So across the different facilities and the different organization and structure and homes that the museum has had, what has really remained constant is our mission as a teaching collection. We are part of an academic department, the Department of Design and Merchandising. So we serve students and faculty in our department, but also students and faculty from across campus as well. And I'm going to highlight some of the ways that we mobilize the collection through different teaching activities. I am responsible for teaching the textile and global fashion history courses here. Those are undergraduate courses, and I teach those classes out of the classroom here in the museum, which means that we get to bring in pieces from the collection just down the hall for students to really learn from the tangible object. So as you can see in these images, we have students that have gloves on, they're interacting with the objects. So they do that to learn throughout the semester. They also, for their formative course assessment, their research paper for the semester, they are assigned a mystery object from the collection. They are intended to have little to no pre-existing knowledge of this object or textile type, but through the clues that they develop through close observation of the object, they then go out and make an informed hypothesis about its identification and develop a research question that they then go and answer. So we're really fortunate to be able to utilize the collection. Sometimes every class we bring
Yeah,
in
that's
pieces.
amazing.
Yeah, twice a week.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. That's awesome.
In our department, we have two concentrations, apparel and merchandising, and interior architecture and design. We are really excited to be able to collaborate with faculty on the interior architecture and design program, particularly with our collection of 42 chairs in the collection. So what we're looking at here is an installation that is the result of a collaboration with students in the History of Interior Architecture and Design course taught by Professor Cami Stutzman. The students come to the museum, they observe a chair. Here they take sketches, take measurements, and then they make a 1/6 scale model of the chair.
Fantastic. Wait, is that a little Eames chair in the
With the blue padding, yes.
yeah, oh my God, awesome. I love these little scales. They're really, really lovely.
They are, and they use such a wide variety of materials when they're making them as well. So you can see ones in like a bent wire, some are in ceramic. So they're really creative with how they represent the materials. And what we're looking at on the screen now are photos from last year, but we actually have up right now some chairs from the version of this project from this year as well.
I have a question. So, how far back do your chairs go in terms of time period?
I know that the one that is in the foreground of the larger photo is significant because it was one of the first to use steam to
Mm,
mold that caning. And
yeah.
I think that that's late 19th century.
Because I was thinking if, obviously there are certain periods that where the furniture and the clothing are so interconnected, like the 18th century, the arms on those chairs are little tiny like Tyrannosaurus Rex arms. And so to accommodate, the skirts and the clothing in that way. So a study collection, a great way of bringing the furniture and the fashion together and talking about how people, lived with this furniture in those garments.
Absolutely, and how furniture adapted to changing garment styles as well. Yeah, I think we could do something very
Yeah.
interdisciplinary here.
Yeah, that's cool. Awesome. Thank you for sharing this. Those are cute. I love those.
My
Those are really
pleasure.
adorable. I love them.
Yeah, they're great. Another ongoing collaboration that we have in terms of teaching is with our product development capstone senior students.
Hmm.
They visit the museum with their professor, Dr. Kristen Morris, and they come to handle and observe garments that particularly have unique closures and fastenings. And they take that experience to inform their senior project, which is the development of a functional or adaptive garment for folks with differing physical and cognitive abilities.
Hmm.
One of the pieces that we always bring out for them is this fabulous Bonnie Cashin matching set that the closures are those twist
Yeah.
buckle toggles. And this is a fabulous jacket because the back actually has kind of like a kangaroo pouch. So it's almost a backpack and jacket combined in one.
This is really gorgeous. That's so simple, but I love that you're highlighting the closures that Bonnie Cashin used throughout her design work and pulling things from sailing and other industrial things into her design work.
Exactly. And for those who may be learning about Bonnie Cashin for the first time, if you recognize this closure from, say, a Coach handbag, you are spot on because Bonnie Cashin was the first designer that was hired at Coach in 1962. So we see a lot of the same twist lock closures on the handbags and on her garments.
Yep. Awesome. Those are great.
Then later in the semester, we invite those students to come back to the museum and we host an installation of their finished design work. Last year, from when these photos are taken, we also had a fashion show here featuring some of their pieces. So this is a really nice opportunity for us, for the students, the faculty, students, friends, and families to be able to celebrate their work and have it come full circle from the inspiration in the museum back into an installation.
So I have a question for you about when you're collecting objects, um, especially given that you're part of the design and merchandising program. Do you, if you're taking in, a donation of some kind, do you try to amass the whole process paperwork? I know other collections do this. So, concept sketch, inspiration research, patterns, et cetera, all the way through to the end. Is that something that you try to collect in your collection as well for the design and merch students?
Great question. The short answer is yes, in that we try to acquire with the object as much information as we can about that object. And if that comes through supporting imagery like sketches or production information, then absolutely we want that. The more information we have, the more valuable it is to us.
Awesome. Excellent.
So we like to use this gallery space that's in the corridor in the museum to showcase student work that can be both design work, like the chairs and the product development work, as well as curatorial work. I teach a graduate seminar called Care and Exhibit of Museum Collections. And what we're looking at here is part of their term projects. They were tasked with coming up with a hypothetical exhibition and writing an exhibition proposal. And that included developing a list of 10 objects,
Mm,
two of which absolutely had to be drawn from our collection. So that exhibition topics did not have to focus exclusively on dress and textiles, but they had to have at least two objects that were from our collection. We have a lot of history students that take this class, so I wanted them to be able to, pursue in their own interests through this project, but then be able to install what we're referring to as these mini exhibitions. So how can you illustrate a whole curatorial concept in only two
yeah,
objects?
that's fantastic. And what beautiful objects. Such a variety of things. What's on the back of that shirt with the shirt and skirt combo, number 4?
That on the back of that shirt are is a illustration of a jazz band playing a concert, and this student's concept was about the jazz renaissance and exploring different visual and material expressions of particularly race and identity and music through the jazz renaissance.
Oh, that's fantastic. And actually,
Mhm.
the print of the other one looks like a crowd singing at a concert or something. It's
Yeah, it's
really
also a
cool.
concert scene. That is a nightshirt from Harrods.
Ah,
Wouldn't you know?
wouldn't you know? And not to, but the lovely sort of I don't know what color they want, tan dress in the other one with the very, severe dropped shoulder of the early 19th century. That's really lovely.
Yes. Yes, and that was paired with another, you know, 1830s garment right beside it that was a darker green that had a similar construction. And that student was looking at beauty, um, the way that beauty conventions overlapped with the symptoms of tuberculosis.
Oh,
Of
wow.
that drop shoulder and the
Yeah,
posture that the drop
yeah,
shoulder would enforce.
yeah. Oh, that's
Mhm.
interesting. Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
that was a biomedical science student. So
Oh.
again, pursuing their interest in infectious disease through fashionable dress.
Ah, excellent. Awesome.
So we also, I just want to show you a really popular installation that we had in this same space before we moved to look at some other spaces. This was a really popular installation that we had earlier this year. It is called A Fancy Flourish Mary Frances Handbags. Mary Frances is a San Francisco based handbag designer, and we installed 99 of her handbags in this space, and we had a few left over. And our entire collection of these handbags came from one single donor who
Wow.
is located here in Fort Collins, who, prior to donating the pieces to the collection, displayed them as art objects in her home.
That's fantastic. Those are really great.
This was really popular amongst our community and visitors. And during the run of the exhibition, when it was March Madness time, we did our own bracket, a fancy florist face off, if you will, to determine the community's favorite handbag. And I've circled it, it's in the bottom right corner of the larger image. That was the winning handbag.
I was wondering what that little circle was. It was like,
That was our
nice,
championship
nice,
handbag.
nice.
We'll move now to look at our other exhibition spaces. This is our Richard Blackwell gallery. It is the second largest of our gallery spaces, and I am showing now a picture of an exhibition that was up at the beginning of last year called Nostalgia Mode: Fashion and Sentimentality in the 1970s. I was very grateful to be able to present this as project-based research at the National Symposium for Costume Society of America this year, but also happy to have the opportunity to share it tonight with a wider audience. This exhibition presented a different perspective on fashionable dress in the 1970s, not about disco, not about polyester. Instead, we were looking at how fashionable dress was part of a larger romanticization of the past that was prevalent in popular culture in the 1970s. So think American Graffiti, Little House on the Prairie, the Waltons, Roots. And the name of the exhibition, Nostalgia Mode, is drawn from the theorist Frederick Jameson's work, in which he uses the term nostalgia mode to describe this blending and pastiche of past styles seen in film and television in the 70s and 80s. So we use the idea of nostalgia mode to investigate how fashion was part of this larger process of romanticizing history through, in this case, this material and visual form of culture.
This is really lovely. I mean, it's great. You're picking up, the obviously the sort of prairie dresses at the on the forefront of the picture. I'm really drawn to the third dress in with the sort of curved pieces. Are those sewn in or is that a print?
That is a print, that is a Mary Mecco print. And that was a dress that the donor of the object made and wore for her wedding.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Mhm. So, part of this story of investigating nostalgia mode really centered around the bicentennial commemorations in 1976, because unlike the commemorations for the centennial in 1876 or 1926, the quincentennial,
Yeah, that's the centennial.
sesquicentennial,
Yep.
um, those events were really marked by this optimistic, future looking perspective. And the bicentennial is interesting because it was the opposite. It was characterized by this widespread look towards the past, and particularly this rose tinted idealization of American history at a time when there were a lot of protest and uprising happening. So we had in the center of the gallery space these three red, white, and blue patriotic designs. The
Mhm.
one in the center, our kind of hero object that encapsulates so much of it, is this homemade bicentennial commemoration dress in this printed patchwork fabric that contains images and figures from the nation building mythology. So Betsy Ross is in there. We, of course, have the Liberty Bell and applique. Just at the collarbone, we have the seal with the eagle. So it's amazing once you start looking through your collection with this idea in mind. how many expressions and versions of it you can find.
Well, and it's such a sassy dress because it's a mini dress. I mean, that is a I don't know if I'd say micro mini, but that's a pretty mini dress. It's like, so
It
it's
it
great.
is. And the one number five, the one to the right of that one in the center, is also a gunny sax dress. So it doesn't have that classic prairie style that we
Mm,
associate with gunny sax that we saw the first two dresses in the previous slide, but it is also the gunny sax label. So that is very much part
yeah,
of
yeah,
this story.
yeah.
Another part of this story that brings it closer to home for us in Colorado is, of course, the romanticization of the American West, which is so much, the Western film genre is so much about this longing for a supposedly bygone, supposedly simpler time. And this was important to telling the Colorado story because while the nation was busy commemorating the 200th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, Colorado was celebrating the 100th anniversary of its statehood. So we see these pieces very much as part of the construction and upholding of the myth of the American West, which so much about ideas of manifest destiny. It's linked to
Mm,
the genocide of settler colonialism, the ongoing erasure of indigenous peoples who were overlooked in the official commemorations of the bicentennial. So this was a way for us to use that idea of nostalgia and the romanticization to think critically about what it meant for Colorado specifically.
okay, so this is amazing. I'm really loving the bell bottoms on those corduroy bell bottoms with the embroidered insert piece, that godet. Is that actually insert or is it an applique over? I can't quite tell.
I believe it's an insert, but this piece was embroidered by the donor's mother for him. And you can see on the little pocket patches the
Oh, yeah.
Taurus sign and then the bull because that was his astrological sign.
Excellent, excellent. Those are
Hmm.
great.
And I know it says it in the caption, but I just want to call it out that that suede suit by Lee is reversible
Uh,
as well.
but of course.
But of course, we were also able to bring this story even one step closer to home to us at the museum. What we are looking at on this slide is a red silk bodice from 1904 that was donated to the museum in 1976. The museum was definitely on the receiving end of that widespread interest in the past that was spurred by the bicentennial in 1976. And we demonstrated that by exhibiting accession records from 1975 and 1976. The small folder in the foreground is 1975, when approximately 150 pieces were donated to the museum. The thick folder in the background is 1976, when approximately 700
Wow.
pieces were donated to the museum. So as people were, interested in maybe that trunk that their grandmother had left them that had their great grandmother's piece that they had never really taken an interest in. Well, the bicentennial gave them a reason to become interested in it and see value in it. And we benefited from that.
That's incredible. That's really great.
At the museum, we have public programming to accompany our exhibitions and to acknowledge the significance of personal collecting practices during the bicentennial era. We hosted a show and tell style event called Nostalgia Night during the run of the exhibition. For this event, community members were invited to bring pieces from their own closets, pieces that they thrifted, that they inherited, maybe that they've kept, and share a story with the group. It was so wonderful. It really gave us a model of this intergenerational sharing and community building. We had stories about the platform shoes on the right were worn to a Queen concert.
Yeah.
We had numerous pieces that had been stewarded through generations. So on the bottom left, we are looking at someone holding up their high school pep squad uniform, sharing a story about how her daughter now wears it as a Halloween costume. And the photo of the participant holding the denim coat close to her, that is a coat that her mother purchased with her first ever paycheck. So, again, one of those intergenerational stories. This event was so successful, both in community engagement and in numbers of attendance. It was the highest number of participants that we had had since before the pandemic. So this show and tell style event has become one of our go-to types of events. And I highly encourage other museums to consider running this type of event. For a small museum, it doesn't take a huge amount of planning and work, and it's really special to hear people's stories.
So let me ask you a little bit more. They come and they share the story about the single garment. Do they talk about its construction or just whatever inspires them in that they still have hung on to? And how did you organize it? Did you just put a call out to community members and invite people, whoever showed up with their favorite thing is what they did?
Exactly. We just put a call out on social media through our newsletter, our mailing list, and we had great attendance. And people had a lot of objects that they wanted to share. So some people had multiple objects, and once we kind of wrapped it up, people stayed and conversed with each other and showed each other their pieces. It was really wonderful. And
That's
I would
fantastic.
say people shared more about what the object meant to them than the construction or material details.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome.
So it fit the nostalgia
Yeah,
theme
totally.
really nicely.
Yeah, that's great.
In that same gallery space earlier this year, we had an exhibition called Inside Out Structures and Secrets. In this exhibition, we had a more sparse installation design, and we featured 11 objects that were shown inside out
Yeah.
in the exhibition. The premise of the exhibition being that the interior is so important to us as museum professionals, as researchers, as curators. It's where we go to look for clues to learn more about the object and its lives. And visitors to a museum rarely have the opportunity to see the interior. So we wanted to give that opportunity by showing these pieces inside out. I will preface this by saying that the selection was totally determined by which pieces were in a condition that would permit them to be shown inside out for the
Hmm.
duration of the exhibition with no anticipated damage. So
Right, right.
the parameters to be considered for this exhibition were um, pretty high bar to be considered for this. And with this idea of wanting to engage the public in looking at the interiors, we prefaced this exhibition with an interactive activity. So, for about a few months before the exhibition, we had three objects that we had selected for the exhibition. We turned them inside out and we had them on these simple tea stands in the vestibule in between our two gallery spaces. So this is a glassed in space, so it has its own kind of light and environmental controls. So we felt comfortable with having the pieces here. And we had a paper and digital questionnaire, and we invited visitors to simply answer the question, what do you see in this object? We got 246 unique responses on that questionnaire, and we went through the answers and we pulled out some of the recurring themes or words or ones that we thought were kind of subversive. And that is what you see on those banners behind those pieces in the installation. So
Nice.
we wanted to incorporate that visitor feedback into the design of the exhibition itself.
I love this. This is a really great idea. I love the the little snips in the background. So I have a
Little
question.
snip.
Number four. Are those pockets that are hanging in the front? That's what they look like.
Yes,
Okay, cool. Because it looks like a pocket, but it's a little oh, and actually in the image to the right, or I'm sorry, to my left, where that is, you can actually see the clipping over the princess scene that goes around, which is fantastic. You see it, it's just a
yes,
little bit bigger than the other. That's wonderful.
yes. And that everyone said pockets for this. I think on the banner we put pockets
Yeah, oh
4 or
yeah, I
5
see people
times
like
because
pockets, pockets.
what everyone was commenting on. We, in this exhibition as well, we, on the wall opposite the vitrine, had photographs of the objects
Mm,
right side out, so visitors could make the comparison. And we had a lot of different types of construction in the garments, from more homemade to what you would see in this skirt suit by James Galanos, which was exquisite perfection, beautiful stitching. But I was mindful of not making a hierarchy with types of objects, so I wanted to also have maybe a more universal experience of an object. I think we've all been here, which is when your favorite pair of jeans needs some mending.
yeah.
So this is a common experience, right? And for this donor, this is raw Japanese denim, so it has no stretch whatsoever. It's very stiff. And he was an avid cyclist at this time of his life, riding around in this denim. And actually, to have the mending done, he coordinated with the um, denim brand 45 RPM, and they were sent to Japan for mending and then sent
Wow.
back to him in
Wow.
the US.
That's great. And what a great way to show that mending. You know,
Yes,
fraying edges and
absolutely.
everything. It's really great.
So earlier this year, we actually just de-installed this a few weeks ago. We had an exhibition in our largest gallery space called Resist, tie-dye practices from around the world by focusing on a technique, resist dye, particularly shaped resist in this instance. We were able to draw on and showcase the breadth and depth of our collection. So we organized the exhibition by culture slash region. We had pieces from India, you're seeing on the slides, the Central Asian ikat, the adire associated with the Yoruba peoples of Nigeria, at Japan, Guatemala, and we were so proud of this exhibition because it is the first time that we have produced an exhibition in this space entirely in-house, produced and installed. So it's a
Oh, wow,
testament
that's
to our
amazing.
team. We are 5 full-time employees. So this really was the work of everyone contributed to this.
That's great. That's amazing.
A few little highlights. We really wanted to play with visitors' preconceived ideas of tie dye and have them question what tie dye is. So, the first thing that viewers saw when they walked in, they were confronted by the wall with this very dramatic installation of this long piece of silk ikat that it looks like a different kind of tie-dye because it has that beautiful painterly ombre, but
Hmm.
it is in fact ikat. So we, in the label writing, invited visitors to return to this piece after they'd gone through the exhibition and look at it with a new perspective.
Oh, yeah.
This is an installation view of the section showcasing pieces from Japan. All of these pieces are wonderful, but I want to give specific attention to the men's kimono in the center. Not only is it just like one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, but you'll notice that on the sleeves, I brought in a detail. There were some Japanese characters that were done in the Kanoko Shibori technique. I reached out to a professor of Japanese language here at CSU and asked for help with a translation.
Mm.
And the translation is, even if my name gets rusty, And the professor interpreted that along with the pine trees on the piece, which are a symbol of immortality, to mean even when I'm no longer here, my name will still live on.
That is so lovely. That's amazing.
Yes. So a beautiful piece made even more special by the meaning.
Yes.
I'm from when I'm in curatorial mode working on exhibitions, I'm always mindful of the links between sections. The three purple pieces to the left are really interesting because they're actually three very distinct techniques to
Mm-hmm.
replicate the Kanoko Shibori fawn spot. The one in the center is the hand dyed shibori technique.
Wow.
The one on the right is actually ikat, replicating shibori, a
Wow.
double ikat. The one on the left is actually printed. And it is that printed one that was the link into this section, which is all about how part of the story of any hand textile technique, including tie dye and resist dyeing, is the mechanization of the technique. So you have to look very closely at this silk sari to see that it is actually machine printed. And part of this story, is the East India Company importing great amounts of this bondini technique, which is the hand technique of plucking and twisting to resist the dye. And that is actually where we get the word bandana from, is the anglicization of bondini. So that's why we covered this plinth with bandanas.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's fantastic.
And we had to bring in the DIY tie dye as well. Particularly, this was such a popular activity in the pandemic, right? Hanging out in your sweatsuit, but wanting an activity that we could do comfortably at home. And then that mechanization question again, as the hand dyed tie dye becomes popular, well, then companies start mass producing tie dye and
Yeah.
selling it. So we acquired this Nike sweatsuit to tell that story. We deinstalled this exhibition in mid September. We're currently in the process of installing a new exhibition in that space.
Oh
It
wow.
opens on October 8th, and it is called Tiger's Leap Fashion Past, Present, Future. If anyone finds themselves in northern Colorado between now and June, stop by. We're going to do two rotations of it, and it is drawing on the philosopher Walter Benjamin's use of the image of the tiger jumping through time as a metaphor for how fashion designers pull from the past in order to create new garments. So we look forward to sharing more about this in the coming months.
That's fantastic. What a great combination of things. Thank you so much.
My
This is
pleasure.
really, really fantastic. Thank you so much. This was wonderful. And I love this last image of is that a tracksuit? What is that? Is it a jumpsuit?
No, that is on the slide now,
On the
that
slide.
is a 1930s evening dress that has the slit down the sleeve, and
Yes.
actually both of those pieces are going to be in a section of the exhibition that's looking at references to the medieval period when there was so much funky sleeve work happening. You can see kind of the dagging on the train of the
Yeah.
1870s dress behind it. So we have a lot of fun sleeves going on there.
Yeah, well, and I was making the connection between the sort of tabs that are overlapping in the back of that low bustle and the connectors over the sleeve, bringing it
Yes,
together in that way.
great connection.
Yeah, so really, and just the linear quality of it,
Hmm.
really wonderful. So back to the moth skirt. Does the moth skirt have a label in it?
I do not think so.
Mm.
I can double check that, but To my knowledge, it does not have a label, but I will double check.
Do you suspect that it was homemade then, or don't know?
I mean, it could have been, right? The fabric could have been purchased, and
So yes, how many people are employed, and what are their titles?
so our five full-time positions are so myself, I'm curator, faculty appointed curator. Um, and then we have a visitor engagement coordinator, a collections database coordinator. We're building a database, so that is a huge process to take
Undertaking.
on. We have an education programs coordinator, and the fifth position is currently a hybrid doing everything because it's interim director as well as a collections manager assistant curator.
Oh,
But she's a star and she
you're all wearing
does
lots of.
it all.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Yes. And
Um,
we also have, graduate students who sometimes work with me or support us and volunteers who support us.
that's amazing. Um, the Bonnie Cashin Ensemble is featured in the Bonnie Cashin collection in the Mount Mary University Digital Fashion Archive, imaged in 360 degrees photography, so you can rotate the image to see the back, which incorporates a backpack.
That is amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, excellent. Great idea for an exhibition in terms of the inside out. That's part of what was so cool about the Charles James exhibit at the Met. And they showed all of the structure. So fantastic. Question. Some of the textiles appear very exposed to the visitor in interaction. How do you minimize that interaction? Um, yes.
Great question. They are. So, two of our spaces, as you saw in the images, are completely glazed and sealed with glass, which is great because it gives us protection of the objects. But the
Mhm.
downside is that you're dealing with the reflection of the glass, right? Can't see up close. So actually think about metaphorically almost how you break the glass in the exhibition. So having high res images and things like that that overcome the glass barrier. But then, as this comment astutely points out, when you don't have the glass barrier, people do want to touch. So we have signage indicating no touching. We have signage that says, please help us keep these textiles in great condition for the future by not touching. But part of the visitor engagement coordinator's role, that is the first point of contact with visitors when they come into the museum. And that person also can kind of have access to cameras and just make sure that the type of engagement that's happening in the galleries is the way that we would like it to be. And if others have techniques for overcoming the desire to touch textiles, we would love to know because we, I'm sure, as many other collections that work with open display experience, we know people want to touch.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's inherent. It's like, what does that feel like?
Mm-hmm.
I was just at a museum last night that is very open, and I was going through with the curator, and I was like, "Can I touch this?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." I was like, "Okay."
Ooh.
He let me touch things. I was like, "Cool, thank you."
We've actually wondered if we had a section that was intentionally tactile, like a touch wall that had different materials that were present in the exhibition. Would being able to touch in one area invite touching everywhere? Like
Hmm.
if you're allowed to touch one thing, is that satisfying or does it just make you want to touch everything?
Or instead of it being in one area, do you have a little like fabric sample next to the didactic where you can feel what that
Hmm.
is, what that, the closest of what that textile would be,
Hmm.
in some way. Some textiles are now historic and are not manufactured anymore, so you would
Exactly.
struggle with some of those. But Paula, thank you so much. Perfect. This has been fantastic. We have a really fabulous collection. I'm so glad that you were able to be with us today. Really, really wonderful. So thank you so much. And if you're out there in the world, please swing by the Avenir Museum and check out everything that they have to offer. It's quite lovely. So
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure to be able to share what we do here at the Avenir Museum.
Please follow the Costume Society of America on Facebook and Instagram, all of our socials, to make sure that you hear about all of our upcoming episodes of Conversation on Dress. Lastly, if you enjoyed this content, we implore you to make a small or very large donation to help keep this content free.